Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to today's session of the JIIPCC Mentorship and Internship Program Week 5. We are all welcome to today's session. I can see we already have two mentors on the call. Welcome, Ms. Abisola. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Mr. Emmanuel, for joining us. Please, favor, thank you also for joining us. If it's possible, we'd like you to just help tell your co-mentees that the session has started so that we can have more people in class and we can move on with today's session. So that we can move on with today's session. Well, not to waste any time while we are waiting for more participants from the mentees to join in, I'll just go ahead to introduce our mentors for today. So, our topic for today is navigating data protection regulations. Navigating data protection regulations. I'll be your moderator for today. Sorry for not introducing myself earlier. My name is Dennis Williams. So, our first mentor for today is Mr. Matthew Saisi. Matthew Saisi is a qualified lawyer with over 7 years' experience working in corporate legal teams as a privacy and data protection specialist. He holds an LLM in computer and communications law and a fellow of information privacy. A highly motivated individual, he uses an innovative approach when it comes to youth mentorship and often thinks outside the box as required. Thank you, Mr. Matthew. Mr. Matthew, I don't think Mr. Matthew is yet. Okay, he's currently with us. Thank you, sir, for joining in. We are glad to have you on the call. Um, our next mentor that we're expecting, but is not yet here with us, is the next mentor we are expecting, but is not yet here with us, is Mr. Solomon Okidara. Um, I think not to waste any time, right? Mr. Solomon has been with us in a couple of classes, and not to just to waste any further of our time reading his profile, considering that I'm very sure we are all familiar with Mr. Solomon. Mr. Solomon Okidara, barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. He's a practicing legal practitioner. He's a practicing legal practitioner and researcher with over 14 years post-call experience and outstanding expertise in human rights with a special bias for digital rights, including data protection and privacy, data identity, online expression, intellectual property, e-commerce, tech and corporate transaction, and artificial intelligence. Mr. Solomon Okidara's profile is on our LinkedIn platform. So if you want to know more about Mr. Solomon, you can kindly go to our LinkedIn page, and I'm sure you will get to see more about Mr. Solomon Okidara. Our third mentor for today, who is currently here with us, is Ms. Abisola Osin. Abisola is a seasoned corporate and technology lawyer with over 14 years of experience in legal and corporate practice. She has gained extensive expertise in corporate governance, privacy, regulatory compliance, capital markets, OEM engagements, managed services, software services, intellectual property, and fintech. She is a visionary leader who has been instrumental in supporting transformational changes of data protection at CWG PLC. And as a group head of legal, she has played a pivotal role in the implementation and enforcement of data protection regulation and policy across the group while leveraging technology and innovation. Has also provided critical legal advice and guidance into management and the board of directors on matters relating data security. Before joining WCWG PLC, she served as the primary legal officer at EAN Aviation, a ground handling and fixed based operator in the aviation industry. Abisola also works with Streamwall and AMP Cone, a leading commercial law firm in Nigeria, where she provides legal advisory services to both local and international companies. Abisola is a graduate of the University of Lagos, Ibemudium University, and the Nigerian Law School, where she obtained her bachelor degree, LLB, and BL, respectively. She also holds an LLM in international trade and commercial law from Donhan University. You're welcome, Ma. We are glad to have you with us in today's session. Our third mentor for today is no stranger to this particular class, right? So, Mr. Emmanuel, no need to read so much of Mr. Emmanuel's um, profile, but I'll just take a few lines of his profile. I'm sure we can do well to still try as much as possible to read it off our LinkedIn page and get to know Mr. Emmanuel much more better. Mr. Emmanuel is an accomplished information technology law specialist with a wealth of experience in guiding clients through the intricate legal landscape of technology with over 8 years of expertise in the field. He has been a trusted advisor on various legal matters relating to information technology, including data, including data privacy, cybersecurity, intellectual property, and e-commerce. We are happy to have you with us, Mr. Emmanuel. Thank you so much for joining in. Okay, I think Mr. Emmanuel is our last mentor for today. So, not to waste any further time, I think it's safe to say that for our mentees, we know the drill, right? We would like to have our presentations first, then we'll have our mentors come and give their insights to the topic, as well as comments on the presentation that was made by the mentees. So we'll be taking the group presentations by both groups. Firstly, like I said, then we'll have our mentors' comments and their insights into the topic of today. So please, do we have our group presenters here with us, Group 1 and Group 2? If you're ready, Group 1, please come up and make your presentation, 7 minutes, so that we can have Group 2 present quickly and then over to our mentors. So Group 1, please, the floor is yours. Quick, make your presentation. Um, Thank you. Who is the group presenter for Group 1? We're waiting for you.
Hello, good evening. I'm presenting for Group 1. I'm trying to share my screen.
All right, thank you, Oluwatobi.
Sorry,
Sarati no one.
I'm so sorry, please. My network is actually keeping me. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you confirm that you can see my screen?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay, sorry. Let me just quickly go back to. All right, please carry on.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. I'm going to be talking on navigating data regulations, the essential role of data officers, the data protection officers. So I don't know if this is supposed to be our slide. Okay. As a way of introduction, I'll start by talking about the agenda for our presentation for today. First of all, we are going to, it's our presentation is split into three parts. We have the introduction, we have which under the introduction, we're going to talk about we're going to try to understand the role of a data protection officer, the importance of compliance and enforcement in data protection, and when a data protection officer is required.
Sorry to
Also, we're
cut
going to
in.
be,
Sorry to cut in, Oluwatobi. Please confirm if I was sharing the right screen.
yeah, I don't think you're sharing the right screen.
Okay, let me try and see if I can get that.
Yeah.
Okay, is this your? Are these your slides?
So I can't see it yet. Uh, yes, this is our slides.
All right, please go ahead. Carry on.
I was at the second slide. If you can just go to the next one. Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So as I was saying, we our presentation into three parts. The first part being the introduction, where we will be looking at understanding the role of a data protection officer. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. Understanding the role of a data protection officer, the importance of compliance and enforcement in data protection, and when a data protection officer is required. So I'll start with understanding the role of a data protection officer. The importance of a data protection officer cannot be overemphasized as it is provided for by both the Nigerian Data Protection, the NDPR and the NDPA. First of all, pardon us, we didn't talk about the NDPA in our presentation, but upon further research or presentation or preparation for the presentation, I would like to talk about I'll be talking about the NDP, provisions of the NDP as it relates to the data protection officers. So first of all, I'd like to say that the role of a data protection officer is he serves as a steward of compliance, as means that the role of a data protection officer is to ensure compliance and in an organization that deals with data. Section 32 of the NDPA provides that every data controller of importance shall have a DPU, that's data protection officer, with expert knowledge of data protection law and practices and the ability to carry out the tasks prescribed under the Act and any other subsidiary legislation. Now, subsection 2 of that same section, that section 32, provides for the persons who can be a data protection officer. and it says can be an employee of an organization or a person engaged by a service contract. I would just like to run through the functions of a DPO as provided for under the NDPA. Now, under the NPA, it provides for three functions of a data protection officer. That is to advise the data controller or data processor, that's the organization the officer is working for, as to data compliance generally, to monitor compliance within the acts and related policies of the data controller or processor. And the last point is to act as a contact point between the commission and issues relating to data processing. So now back to our slides. I already said that the data protection officer is a sort of compliance. So generally, the role of data protection is centered on ensuring compliance and enforcement. Is to me, I understand his role to be that of uh, making sure that every aspect of data handling, every aspect of data control, every aspect of data processing is done in compliance with law. He ensures that the the data subjects, the data controller, the organizations handling sensitive personal data or personal data, they are done in the right manner. So I'll be going to the next slide. Sorry, I can't see the slide. So can we go back to the previous slide? Sorry, I have something to say on that. So now, before we go into the role, I'd like to state also that if you look at the NDPR and the NDPA, they don't provide for they don't provide for a special qualification. It doesn't say you must have, for instance, the NDP now does not provide for a special qualification. It does not state whether the DP, sorry, must have a qualification in data protection, but it just says that you must be an expert in knowledge. So it might be somebody who is vast in data privacy concepts, somebody who the law, who's like a lawyer now, for instance, who is vast in data protection laws, who is vast in cybersecurity, data protection and privacy laws. Those persons can serve as DPOs if in line with if the organization or the data processors or controllers are satisfied that the person who they want to appoint as a DPO possesses the requisite information and knowledge, such a person can serve as a data protection officer. Now, a data protection officer can also be an individual entity. Hence, we have data protection compliance organizations. This means that, for instance, like I said earlier, a data protection officer can be an employee of the company, or it can be an individual employed for that sole purpose. Or the company, data processors or data controllers can decide to outsource compliance and enforcement of data to an organization that is created solely for that purpose. So now it's just like, for instance, we lawyers now, we perform company secretarial functions to companies, even though we are not employees of those companies, even though we don't have the staff, or we are not in the same building with those companies, we perform those services. So these data protection compliance organizations can perform or can offer compliance services towards these data processors and data controllers. Now, it is essential for an organization to engage a deep co or a data protection officer. Now, I'll be going to talk about the roles and responsibilities of these data protection officers. First of all, we have here that they have a duty to ensure an organization's data protection, to ensure that the company meets up with data protection and privacy requirements. That's in regards to compliance. Like I said earlier, the primary function of a data protection officer is to ensure that the company is working for, or the company handling data, is in is not found guilty of breaking any data privacy statutory framework or data privacy laws. So also this role also extends to performing other functions like conducting trainings for the the data controller and data processors. So in the organization where a data protection officer finds himself, he's expected to create an awareness of with data compliance in the organization. Also, he's to provide regular advisories to of management members of staff and relevant third parties within the organization. This explains the fact that a data protection officer act this further buttresses the point that a data protection officer is an essential part of an organization that deals with data. So because from this now he's supposed to be he's important to every aspect of the organization, both the top management, third parties, other members of staff. So he has a huge responsibility in an organization. Also, he is to monitor data protection compliance. He is to be abreast with the fact with recent events in the field of data protection and privacy. It is the duty of a data protection officer to always know when issues of compliance have come up, both nationally and internationally. So it's to be abreast with international frameworks and statutory frameworks. That means as data protection officer, it goes beyond the national framework, that's the NDPR and the NDP. He has to be aware of the GDPR as well, the international bodies that come up with data regulations and advise accordingly. And like I said, is to serve as the contact between the third part between the subjects and regulatory bodies. Now we go to the next slide. Now we're going to talk about the reasons for compliance with for compliance of the for reason for compliance by organizations that deal with data. The first one we have is protecting privacy. Yes, the main reason for data frameworks or the data awareness that is currently going on is protect, going to protect data subjects. So this this compliance, remember I said data protection officers are meant to compliance by the workforce, and the reason for compliance and enforcement is to protect data subjects. The reasons why we have compliance and enforcement generally is just to protect the data subjects first to protect their rights. So that's the major reason for compliance and enforcement. Then we have particularly
Oh, sorry, please. Who has his mic unmuted, please? Who else has his mic unmuted, please? Can you go ahead?
okay, so we have one of the reasons for compliance and enforcement is to build trust.
That one they said the video has posted in our page. What's in fact?
And the data now if
The most is
individuals
it not
now
that survey he was going around?
noise.
Sorry about that. Sorry. Let's get back to the presentation.
Okay. Okay, so as I was saying, I was talking about the reasons for compliance and enforcement, and I spoke about to ensure protection of privacy. And now I was explaining the issue of the reason of building trust, because uh, the a data subject will be more inclined to give out his personal data when he's assured or he's just assured that his data is going to be handled in line with the established frameworks. That means the if a if he's satisfied that this organization if the organization can prove to him that they are going to handle data in line with compliance and with compliance requirements. So that's one of the reasons for compliance and enforcement. It builds trust. And also in line of building trust, once a data subject is aware that if there's a breach, now this leads me to my next point. If there's a breach in data, in the handling of his data, or processing of his data, he can enforce such rights. I think it will build more trust in the system of data privacy and protection. Then we have legal obligations. Now, the reasons for obviously the legal there's the implementation or the promulgation and enactment of the statutory frameworks that regulate data protection. Now, it imposes an obligation on data controller and data processors to handle data of the data subjects in line with the requirements of the Act. Now, I already gave an example of Section 32, which provides who provides the function of an NDPA. So, and he's to monitor the compliance with the Act, compliance within the Act by this data organization. So, in the sense of the data protection officer is an agent of the company as an employee, though, but he's also an agent of the law. That means he's to ensure that the law is being followed or is being followed to the letter. That imposes a legal and also this also makes in turn it ensures that data privacy organizations adhere to the legal obligations that they are actually handling data in line with compliantly or in line with the requirements of the law. Then we have other promotes innovation. Now, because for a fact, based on observations, and I know we have seen it, the fact that we have a lot of that we have a we are there's an establishment of a framework that regulates data in Nigeria. It has automatically seen the rise of data management services in different aspects of Nigeria's economy. We have data management organizations in the financial system, in the financial sector, we have in the educational sector, we have in the health sector. So this is born out of the fact that there is now an established system of compliance and enforcement. That means now we can enforce this. Now it allows people to come up with ideas as it relates to data that are going to be in compliance with the laws that are in place. Then we have the global standards. Yeah, sorry, compliance with we have a compliance with data protection regulations facilitates international data transfers by aligning with global standards, promoting interoperations among different jurisdictions. So it ensures that international standards, the international data transfers are done in line with global standards. Then finally, we have compliance and enforcement issues are essential for safeguarding the rights of individuals or data subjects. Like I said, the main purpose of compliance and enforcement is to protect the privacy rights of data subjects. So can we go to the next slide? Now we are looked at we are going to be looking at when a DPO is required. Personally, I believe that a DPO is required at the point of at the earliest stage of a company's formation, just like you have the directors of a company, promoters of a company. I believe if a company is aware that it's going to be handling personal data of data subjects, it's one of its first duties is to employ the services of a data protection officer. And now I will take us back to Section 32 of the NDPA, which provides that it says that Section 32 sub 1 says a data controller or of major importance. So this act now imposes the duty of employing or using the services of a data protection officer when the data processor or data controller or the data controller is a data controller of significant importance. And Section 65 now defines or explains what a controller data controller of significant importance is, and it explains that these are organizations or controllers or processors that are operating or residing in Nigeria, and they intend to process data of more than the such number of data that is prescribed by the commission, or the data they are processing is of significant importance to the economy or security. So now the NDPA now suggests to me, based on my understanding of the NDPA, it suggests to me that if you don't meet the requirements of a data controller of significant importance, you don't need a data protection officer. But I beg to differ based on the fact that the nature of since every based on, and this is my own position, I believe that every data controller or every data processor, no matter how little or how big such an organization is, it is meant to have a data protection officer because of the nature of business of that organization. That means I'm saying that since the purpose of compliance or the purpose of enforcement is to protect the data, there has to be like a sort of an internal ombudsman to ensure that these people handling data are doing it in line with the standards required by the law. And I don't believe it should be restricted to only data processors or data compliance and controllers of significant importance. And now I'm going to be going to the criteria for mandatory appointment of a DPO. Now I've already mentioned that. Okay, now the NDPR now requires sorry, the NDPR now requires every sorry, the NDPR requires every data controller to appoint a data protection officer. Sorry,
Um,
please.
Hello, Mr. Oluwatobi. Please, in addition, please, we'd just like for you to kind of speed up the presentation so that we can also hear from group two. Your presentation a
Okay,
little
okay,
bit
I'll speed up.
of
I'll speed up.
time. So try and speed up. Thank
Okay. Okay, so based on for the criteria for mandatory appointment of a DPO, the NDPR requires every data controller to appoint a data protection officer for the purpose of ensuring adherence to the NDPR. I've said this already. Now, the the implementation of framework of the NDPR requires every data controller to appoint a dedicated DPO within 6 months of commencing business or within 6 months of the issuance of the NDPR implementation framework, where one or more of the following are present. So now, the criteria mentioned under the NDPR includes one, the entity is a government organ, ministry, department, institution, or agency, and the core activities of the organization involves processing of deep personal data of over 1,000 data subjects per annum. Now, and the organization processes sensitive personal data in the regular course of its business, or the organization processes critical national information infrastructure consisting of personal data. Now, based on the NDPR now, is the criteria for mandatory appointments from this from this is based on the size of the data controller. That's it's because it provides that if you process the data of over 10,000 people, if it's a government institution and it's processing sensitive personal data on a regular basis, you have to have a data protection officer. So, and one thing I'd like to point out here is this requirement doesn't only affect private, but it's also a government organization is meant to also have a data protection officer. Can we go to the next slide? Now, assessing the need for a DPO in different organizations. I already explained this in the last slide, but for the purpose of to reinforce it, now I said the size of the data processor, data controller determines if you need a DPO, the nature of the organization data processing activities, the volume and sensitivity of the data, the applicable data protection law will also determine if an organization requires a DPO. Like for instance, section 2 of the FPA law requires data controllers of significant importance to have data protection officers with data experts in the knowledge. Also, um, the GDPR now also makes it compulsory for organizations to get a DPO in the following cases where the organizations are processing data of e-residents on a large scale, the processing of the data of persons. So generally, the size, the complexity, the nature of the data being processed determines if you need a DPO. But I beg to differ. I believe that the mere fact that you are an organization that processes data, no matter your size, you should have a DPU because every data is sensitive. So to me though, now we're going to the next slide. Now appointing a DPU. The next slide, please. Now, like I already said, coming from Section 32 of the NDPA and the NDPR, there is no strict requirement for a person to be a data protection officer. If according to, it depends on the management of of the organization or the employer. If they are satisfied that the person to be employed as a data protection officer is an expert in the field and has obtained sufficient knowledge in that area and is abreast with the laws that regulate data compliance, he can be appointed as a data protection officer. So it is at the instance of the persons who are employing such a person. For our presentation, we outlined some of the requirements that at least should be expected of a data protection officer. For instance, must have a good understanding of data protection laws, both local and international, must have good communication skills, must have ability to train staff on data protection awareness, self-confidence, and technical and analytical skills. These are skills that should be present because it is a very sensitive position in the company, and everybody needs a data protection officer or the assistance or the services of a data protection officer in an organization. Like remember, I mentioned the rules, they perform rules to third parties, to the management, and to even staff. So you cannot afford to an organization cannot afford to trivialize the appointment of a data protection officer. And we can go to the next slide. Now, it is advisable that the data controller or data processor, in appointing a data protection officer, they should look at professional qualifications. We advise that there are so many qualifications. We have the IAAP, we have the CIPPM, we have different certifications to show that the person has is qualified to serve in that role is employed to serve in. It does not mean that a mere presentation of those certificates qualifies you. The person must display the required expertise. He must show that he's able to take up the task. And also, most times, most DPOs are IT professional securities or experts in legal background. Now, we have different. Now, this as a result of efforts of the government to beef up the framework of data protection and privacy in Nigeria. This has given birth to an area of law known as data protection, privacy and protection law. We have a lot of young lawyers, a lot of lawyers going into the area of law now because we have recognized the relevance or the importance of lawyers in this area too. So basically, a person who the qualification of a person to take care of or to provide data protection services is not restricted to only IT persons only. It affects lawyers too. Affects anybody who can show that he has the required expertise. Now we have the GDPR states that the favorable qualities of a DPO would be expert knowledge of data protection law and practices. I already explained that. So you must have the expertise and you must be able to fulfill your tasks. So not just to have the expertise, but you must be able to fulfill your tasks. And also there should be a division of responsibilities between the DPO and other organizational units. If not, the DPO will face impossible challenge. Like I already said, a DPO plays a significant position, a significant role in an organization that handles data because he is needed by especially all aspects of that organization. So there should be a symmetry or a workflow between the DPO and other departments to enable a smooth operation of activities. Because if the DPO is left to handle it, it's going to be overwhelming and it's going to be an impossible task. So he needs cooperation with other departments. Can we have the next slide? Now, like I said, the DPR and the NDP does not provide for a specific qualification or professional qualification of a data protection officer. However, the key skills and knowledge of a DPO should possess, according to NDPR, is data protection knowledge. I already explained this. They should be familiar with relevant laws, awareness of data of international best practices. The truth is, data protection framework is constantly in state of flux. It's always changing. Particularly in Nigeria, it's going to see more change because it is new, and we have a lot of comments and contributions as to the validity or the effectiveness or the efficiency of the current framework in Nigeria. So definitely, it's advisable for a data protection officer to keep himself abreast with the new laws. Recently, this week we had the PrivyCon conference where a lot of lawyers came and gave their own opinions, their 2 cents as to framework of data in Nigeria. And it is advisable that data practitioners are to keep themselves aware or abreast with certain facts. So we're going to the next slide. Now they should have technical skills and soft skills. They should have basic the knowledge required of a data protection officer goes beyond having just sufficient knowledge in data processing and the legal background. You must possess soft skills and technical skills. That means it is advisable that a data protection officer is meant to have a first-hand knowledge of the business of which he's serving. For instance, the data protection is amendable to different sectors of the economy. We have processing of data in finance world, we have processing of data in the health world, we have processing of data in the commercial sector. I mean, we have it in the educational sector. So apart from possessing the data protection or privacy skills, the protection officer is supposed to have knowledge of the industry of which he's serving. It's not just okay to have skills in data, but you must have skills in educational industry to know how to apply your skills in data to that industry. You should have skills in you should have skills in the finance sector, for instance, basic knowledge in finance, basic knowledge in health. Also, they should possess soft skills like problem solving and analytical skills because I mean they are solving a problem, whether you like it or not, you're solving a problem. So you should possess analytical skills, communication skills, organizational skills, and you must be independent and objective. Now, I said earlier that the data protection officer is not just loyal to an agent of the company he's working for or providing services to, but he's an agent of the law and the commission also, and also an agent of the data subject rights. So in his dealings, he is expected to be independent and objective because the main purpose of compliance is to ensure that the rights of a data subject is protected at all costs. Can we go to the next slide? Also, is to possess conflict management and negotiation skills. Then also continuous professional development. I said this you should be a data practitioner as well as other professionals. It's expected that you are supposed to always learn, keep learning because there's a lot to know or there's a lot to cover in this field. Considering the fact that also, for instance, in Nigeria, it is just our data protection is just evolving. So there's room for professional development. So every data protection officer is expected to always keep learning, be abreast with the fact with the laws internationally and nationally. They are aware with the changes in the industry to help in delivering excellent professional services. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so in summary, I would like to appreciate everyone for listening. I've explained the fact that okay, the data protection officer plays a significant role in data privacy and data protection, and the laws do not require the laws just provide that there should be expertise in the knowledge, but it does not provide the means or a setting guidelines to use to determine if a person is qualified. Now, so and it also provides it's in the instances where an organization is to employ the services of a data protection officer. But I'm saying that I firm believe that a data company or sorry, a data processor, a data controller, no matter how big, no matter how the size, no matter the nature or complexity of operation, is meant to have a data protection officer to aid in compliance and enforcement and also to protect the rights of data subjects. Thank you for listening. That's our presentation for this week.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Toby, for that wonderful presentation. well done to Group 1 and all the members that contributed to getting the task done. Please, Group 2, quickly, we are short on time. Please, can you make your presentation fast and let it be short so that we can give enough time to our mentors to speak and also have enough time for questions and answers. So please, Group 2 presenter, please, the floor is yours. Come up and make your presentation as soon as possible so that we can have our mentees um, talk.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I can hear you, Mr. INE.
I'm making. Yes, my name is Idris, and I'll be making the presentation for Group 2. Please, can you put the slides on, guys?
Okay, I'll do just that. Please, you can go ahead and start with the introduction.
Okay. We're talking about how navigating data protection and the responsibilities of a data protection officer. We're also looking at the fines and breaches when there's a breach of data protection and the penalties and fines for non-compliance, and also the best practices for data protection compliance in Nigeria and across board. So before going further, we'll actually have to define who a data protection officer is. Now, a definition for the data protection officer is being given in section 32 of the Data Protection Act. It gives us a hint where it says in subsection 1, where it says that a data controller of major importance that designates a data protection officer with expert knowledge of data protection law and practices and the ability to carry out the tasks prescribed under this act and subsidiary legislation made under it. In our research, we also went further to go into the GDPR and see what entails one to be a data protection officer. And this has been provided in Article 37 of the GDPR, which outlines this. Going further, we try to look at the responsibility of the data protection officer. Now, the responsibilities of the data protection officer is rightly identified in Article 39 of the GDPR. However, going back to Nigeria, we also look at the NDPR. Mostly an adoption of the GDPR rights for responsibility in section 32, sub 3, which identifies some of the duties. Please, next slide. It includes upholding data protection laws and practices. Now, as a data protection officer within an organization, you are meant to uphold data protection laws and practices, including the principles. This has been provided in section 32, subsection 33. And then the second function is to monitor for the monitoring of compliance. This is specifically been provided in section 33, sub 3B, where it says that monitoring compliance with these acts and related policies of the data controller or data processor. And this is also in article to monitor compliance with this regulation with other union or member states. So as a data protection officer within an organization, you have to make sure that you have to monitor the compliance with the regulations that are being provided within your jurisdiction and also outside your jurisdiction, and also to look at the policies that also affect them. Now, 3 is to support and data handling. PO, which is the data protection officer, it needs to support the business operations of their business while considering data protection requirements. In as much as it's going to be concerned about the data protection and also the privacy and rights and also the responsibilities of the organization, it needs to understand the industry-specific risks and drafting data protection provisions in commercial agreements to ensure compliance with the regulations in Nigeria, including the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation, and also the Nigerian Data Protection Act, as it applies. Next slide. Good. Another key thing it's supposed to do as a data protection officer authority of data is supposed to communicate. It's supposed to communicate with the governing body. In Nigeria, it means to be the contact point for the Nigerian Data Protection Commission on issues related to data processing. This is also provided in Section 32, sub 1, you look at C, provision of C. And also, it's also foster security aware culture. This means that you're supposed to inform, advise to inform the data law processor or the employees on matter related to data processing under this act that's provided in Section 32 sub 3, sub 32 sub 3. Next slide, please. Now, what are the penalties? What are the penalties where a data controller or processor fails to fulfill his obligation? Now, there are legal and financial implications that will occur when this happens. Now, next slide. Now, one thing is a suspension of service of that data controller pending further investigation. So where there is an allegation based on it,
Mr. Ayeni, are you still with us? It seems the group presenter is no longer on call. Please have someone else from the group, if that would be possible to. Okay.
so can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome back. Okay. All right, Mr. Nathaniel, please, can you just go ahead and continue while we wait for him to come back?
Okay. Give me a second, please. So we have been looking at the responsibilities of a data protection officer. Well, basically, a data protection officer, as has been said already, is someone who has expert knowledge in data protection laws, and he's instrumental in ensuring compliance with relevant data protection laws. And basically, the services which he renders to a data controller or processor are advisory services, and he also monitors compliance with the Act and related policies of the data controller or processor. And that's as stipulated in Section 32 of the Nigerian Data Protection Act and Article 37 of the GDPR. And I'd like to add that a data protection officer could also be within the Nigerian context. A data protection officer could also be a licensee of the commission, the Nigeria Data Protection Commission, who also has a certain level of expertise in relation to data protection laws and the Act. And the basic responsibility of a data protection officer under the employment of the commission would be to monitor, audit, or to monitor compliance with the Act, and a go-between he's going to be a go-between between the commission and data processors or data controllers. Mr. Williams, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I beg your pardon. So, what are the penalties or fines for non-compliance? The penalties or fines for non-compliance are stated here. It includes suspension of service of the data controller and pending further investigations. So data controllers suffer the data controllers suffer the risk of being suspended if they are not complying with the obligations stipulated in the Act. And also, the Commission has the authority to order the parties in breach to appear before a panel to determine the liability of the officers of that company or organization that has caused the breach. Public notice to warn the public to desist from patronizing the affected organization. Um, that's basically publicity, negative publicity for the organization that breaches data data uh, data compliance obligations within the Act. And the Commission also reserves the right to refer the matter to the appropriate professional body for sanction of its members involved in the breach. We have also stated here that the failure to protect personal data under the NDPR constitutes an offense and may be punishable with fine and imprisonment for up to 3 years. There is also a financial dimension to it. Organizations who handle people's data when they are in breach will also suffer penalties for such breaches of personal data, and the data controller shall be liable for any breach of the data subject's rights, personally liable for any breach of the data subject's rights. The data subject also have the right to approach the courts to redress any breach suffered by them by way of damages in a civil case. I'm also going to go through the best practices for data protection compliance. We have stated about 4 of them here in our slide. The first is data compliance organizations are required to maintain a comprehensive data maps and records of processing activities to identify personal information that is collected and shared, and legal basis for processing and how the information is used. So data compliance organizations have to keep such records that would help them trace compliance with requisite laws. Secondarily, such organizations are required to secure personal data across the organization and beyond by not only securing internal databases, but also ensuring that third-party vendors and processors are up to speed with their security. Thirdly, they are to be proactive with data subjects access requests by setting up systems for receiving and responding to requests from data subjects on what data you have, what data you have on them, and what you should do with their data. And finally, organizations are also required to develop an encompassing privacy policy that includes data retention and destruction guidelines. So basically, all of these best practices are woven around the legal basis for collection of data and the principles of data processing. So companies and organizations are required to handle people's data and ensure that such data is handled in a way that's consistent with the principles of data processing and the legal basis for collecting them in the first place. So the role of data protection officers under the NDPA and the NDPR is critical in ensuring compliance with data protection laws and upholding an individual's privacy rights. And fulfilling their responsibilities effectively, DPOs must contribute to enhancing data protection standards and fostering a culture of compliance within organizations operating in Nigeria. So that's basically the size of our presentation for today. I don't know if Ayeni is back already.
Yes, I am back. Thank you very much for aiding. Something came up, technical issue of mine.
All right.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Nathaniel, and thank you, Mr. Ayeni, for stepping up to make presentation. Thank you, Nathaniel, for filling in for Mr. Ayeni while he was having his network challenge. So quickly, thank you to both groups for well done to group two, like I would say, for your presentation. You people did a job well done. Thank you to both groups for putting your work together and so making timely submissions and also presenting in the session. So it's now time to have our mentors speak, right? But before we just do that quickly, considering the weather and we don't want it to be dark before we take our pictures, I would just like to ask everyone on call if it's possible for us to just quickly take a quick picture for our social media, right, and to upload and for our uploads, and then we'll have our mentors discuss on the subject matter. So please, can we quickly do that so that we can go ahead with the rest of the class? Please, I would like to ask, please, can we turn on our video cameras so that we can quickly take pictures? Thank you, Mr. Matthew. You're welcome, sir. All right, please, can we have more mentees turn on their videos if that's possible? Thank you. All right, thank you very much for that. Okay, over to our mentors. Okay, I think I will just start with Miss Abisola. Thank you so much, Ma, for your patience being on call, waiting through the mentees. We just want to hear from you, starting from you, not in any particular order, but starting from you, we want to hear from you, Ma. What's your take on today's topic? And also, what did you think about the presentation made by the mentees? You're welcome, Ma.
All right, thank you very much, Dennis, and good afternoon, everyone. Please, can you confirm you can hear me?
I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to say a big well done to the two groups. Although I must say that I kind of preferred the second one because it was a bit more direct. So, but not to say that the other team did not do justice. Somebody speaking. Batinke, can you mute Batinke, please? Dennis, please, can you mute Batinke, please? Very much. All right, so I was saying that I really like the presentations, although I would say that I preferred the second presentation because I felt it was a bit more direct in the sense that it was more practical in terms of what we see. But then it also depends on whichever way you're looking at it. But I like the fact that both groups were able to just talk about what a DPO is and the roles of a DPO and all. But I just wanted to say that for you to be a DPO, there's a lot that you need to take into consideration. First of all, so I'll just talk practically now because I see that a lot of times when people are speaking like this, it's things that they've researched and things. But so if you're in the corporate sector, a lot of times now companies are required to, and this is how companies really get into data protection. Companies are required to file their audited reports regarding the, okay, so you know that there are usually audits every year, right? So companies are expected to file their reports every year with the NDPC. And if you have a company and you don't have anything to file, you don't even know where you're going, like data protection is pretty much, off for you. What are you going to do? So that's where, the act comes in as someone that has expert knowledge and all, but a lot of times you find that it's lawyers that actually delve into the position of a DPO. Although the law also makes provision for a data protection compliance organization, which is the DPCO. The DPCO actually liaises with the DPO, when they come out, and I like the way that the second, I think a particular group mentioned it. So, so when you're the DPO, what really happens? What is your role? And I must say that everybody has really pretty much mentioned everything that they're supposed to talk about, but I'll just talk about it from I'll just mention a few things and I'll talk about it from the point of view of, things like data breaches. So you've already said that you already know who a data protection officer is, and you mentioned it according to section 32 of the NDPA, and of course, it's probably more explanatory to the NDPR. I believe that's article 4, of the NDPR. Yes, so one second, please. I'm just trying to get my sections. So, and I know that you guys have talked about the fact that they play a huge role in compliance and enforcement of data protection laws. Fantastic. I know you talked about sanctions, I saw that, but like I said, there are other things. For example, they are the link between the data controllers and the data compliance officer. So the data, and the data and the DPCOs. So for example, the DPCO is required to audit your organization every year. So who is going to tell the DPO or DPCO the DPCO what the organization has been doing? If your company is a data controller or a data processor, somebody, or if your company is both, somebody needs to tell them. I like the fact that the second group talked about they make data protection aware in organizations. So I like that. That's very important because I'm sure you know that there's a General Data Protection Day. So yes, very well, that works. They're the ones that champion it in the organization. And of course, they notify the company management about data breaches, and eventually they notify the NDPC about data breaches. There's also the fact that they are responsible for, records of data, records of data processes. So basically, what one of the things they're supposed to do is to record, the data, processes that are happening, how data is being processed in the organization. The activities. What are you doing? What is the HR department doing? Okay, they are collecting things for about people's BVN, or they are collecting because they have access to their accounts. They know their health records by virtue of the fact that people give information about their HMO. If someone is HIV positive, for example, and that's sensitive information, obviously. Those are the kinds of things that the HR does. So there's always a record. So for the finance department, and this is why I said that I'm speaking very practically, because I know what they do. For the finance team, they do that. So now there's another thing, like if you work in a tech company, for example, or your company is bringing out a product or anything, you need to be very careful because you need to assess whether this particular product that you are going to launch or you're going to put to the public or bring out to the market is not going to have any negative data protection consequences. For example, to breach people's data, it's not going to work well, or different things like that. So they actually, foster and champion, the fact that you have to have DPIAs, which is data protection impact assessments. Yes, you guys have talked about the fact that they monitor compliance, and I've said that they provide advice regarding DPIAs, which is data protection impact assessment. I believe that you guys should have discussed that or worked on that, but typically, that is what it is. And of course, the cooperative is supervised with the NDPC. And one thing that a DPO should do is to exercise professional secrecy. Regarded as personal information in the organization, even if somehow it will come to you, or you are overseeing departments that handle personal information, and for some reason maybe you might be privy to that. So there's this, onus on you to have professional secrecy. So when is a DPO required? And I did hear from the first presenter, I really liked the fact that he was championing that every organization should have a DPO. And while that is very, very laudable, I don't believe it's practicable. But I attended the PrivCon conference, and I was very happy that the representatives of the NDPC did talk about the fact that, yes, not every organization would probably need to, because of the amount of people's personal data that they are processing. So sometimes it's up to 2,000, it's less than 2,000, or in whatever way. But they mentioned something, and they said there's some places that maybe they might actually have something to do with data, even though they're a small organization, but some kind of data, passes through them, and maybe that data is sensitive, and that such organizations are actually required to just do a one-off, filing, just so that at least there's a record that this organization. So I think that is the way to go, especially for companies or for organizations because you have to think about the monetary implications for the organization. If they're getting a DPCO, you know that you're going to pay some money. If they're getting a DP, and if you don't have a lawyer in your organization, because some companies don't have lawyers in their organizations, to outsourcing. And also I believe that if you're a small law firm, or you're a small, well, maybe not, let me not mention law firm, but if you're a small accounting firm and you're just three, and people are just trying to make your way, and you're just auditing a company's accounts, and it's not personal data, that you're working on, there may not be any need. But I do understand what you were saying about that. So, of course, we are required by regulation, to be a DPCO. And I think you mentioned when, they are required, and you talked about the professional expertise of a DPO, and of course the penalties. And I know that I think the NEPA section 48 and 49 delve into the enforcement orders and penalties regarding breaches of data. But I mean, that's all I would say, but I wanted to say well done to the two groups. And I also wanted to say that it's in data protection, or when you're working on DPA or DPC, on DPAs, sorry, on data protection, basically, you should always have a good, view of, have a good international view, that you shouldn't, just rely on the Nigerian Data Protection. And the Nigerian Data Protection Act has done a lot, and the NDPR has done a lot in trying to make it localized. But there's the GDPR, there's a lot of stuff on internationally, and it will really, really help you to have an informed decision, and even be able to, have meaningful and impactful, conversations regarding what to do regarding in data protection. Thank you very much. This is what I want to discuss. Thank you. I don't know if anyone has any questions for me, but I think Mr. Emmanuel wants to come up. Thank you. Or is it Mr. Matthew? I don't know. Sorry.
for that wonderful, lovely talk and also your feedback. Okay, Nathaniel. Okay, I think the whole session for questions and answers. So maybe when Mr. Matthew talks, and then we have our other mentors, you
Okay.
can go ahead and ask your question. Uh, yes, we'll be taking your question.
Hello.
Dennis, did you say we're taking questions now? I think Nathaniel wanted to speak.
Yes, I have a question. I thought he said at the
Yes.
end of the class.
Okay,
At the end
that's
of the
what
class.
okay, that's fine. I wanted to be sure I heard the right thing. It's fine. I think we should allow
Yeah.
Mr. Matthew to continue. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we've
All right.
lost Dennis. So I'll just jump in the interest of time. Right. So I think for me, as far as presentations go, those are two of the best I've seen in these classes, just in terms of the projection, the delivery, the confidence of the presenters. So I'll start by obviously giving you those kudos to the two presenters. I think it was Oluwatobi and was it Nathaniel? Yeah, that was really good. My only issue maybe would be with the slides. For me, especially for group one, the slides had packed quite a bit of content. And they were looking very, very dense, especially where you have all this white text in small font, sort of packed into a very small space. I don't think that came across very well, can be very straining for the eyes. And also it's information overload. With the formatting too for both teams, maybe you could have done better. Even in terms of giving headings for group two about what you're talking about, providing an agenda of the topics you're going to cover and the problem statement. So a lot to be learned there, but really good delivery. As far as the content goes, for group one, I think had a lot more of a structure. You had a bigger overview. I noticed you had a couple of different areas you talked about, like key considerations for appointing a DPO, qualifications and skills required, which the other group didn't have. That was, I think, really nice. But on the same side, the second team did more emphasize the importance of data subject rights requests, the data retention and destruction, impact assessments, and giving advice, which is sort of the core duties of a DPO. So two different approaches. I can't fault you, but overall, I'd say very, very good presentations. One thing you probably both would have left out. Again, I'll borrow a leaf from my learned sister Abisola's comments. Technically speaking, one thing you guys could have highlighted would have probably been, in terms of considerations, would be cost. The data protection officer ideally is meant to be an independent sort of officer. So someone who can act without fear of retaliation and reports generally directly into the C-suite level or the top line management of the organization. And why is that? Is because obviously the duties of the DPO come both from practicality and both from the law. So like group one said, there's a really high duty there to ensure that data subjects' rights, which are now legally enforceable under the NDPA, NDPR and NDPA, can be acted on, or are enshrined or are disbursed or are whatever term you wanna use there. So given those two things, one thing that really factors into that is cost as far as practicality goes. You know, it's got to be sometimes you may be able to appoint someone, let's say head of legal as your designated data protection officer, but then their functions are being discharged by compliance officers, etc. Or you may be able to go outside and get data protection as a service offering. Maybe you have a law firm where you say we only have this level of risk based on the mandatory requirements. So can you come in twice a year, maybe do an internal audit for us, a data privacy audit, or can you advise us in this or create for us standard forms to use? And you move on like that. It could be maybe you have a very large organization and you want a DPO for HR because you have 30,000 people within the company, and a DPO for advertising, etc., etc. So other than that, in terms of omission, probably the only other thing I would wonder is, you know, for the next time, please be able to make a distinction between what's a requirement in Nigeria and what's a requirement, say, under the UK GDPR or the EU GDPR or the CCPA. I noticed in some of the text you've copy pasted maybe from some source, and it's still talking about the EU, and the phrase just before that is talking about the NDPA. So you want to really make sure the distinction is understandable and proofread the work. So that probably just goes back to the formatting and that tidying up bit. I've probably taken 5 minutes. I'll give room to the other mentors for now, and yeah, let's get to the Q&A. But overall, for me, two of the best. You've got to be proud of yourselves there.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matthew, for that wonderful insights that you shared and feedback you gave as regards the presentation. We don't, I think Mr. Emmanuel is no longer with us, and Mr. Solomon is here to join in. So I don't know if it's possible for us to still get a little bit of insight from both our mentors while we await the question and answer session. So, Mr. Matthew, we can just go back back with you. Do you have maybe any further insights you would like to share with us on navigating the roles of the data protection officer?
Okay, let me go back to the email and kind of read the question you guys sent out. The role of a DPO, when is a DPO required? How to appoint a DPO, penalties and fines for non-compliance. Yeah, we can talk about this all day, basically. One thing I would say is probably that a DPO can sit in practicality in many different departments, depending on the nature of the organization. One of the groups really did a good job of highlighting the importance of knowing the sector. So in some organizations, you want your DPO to sit under, say, your general counsel function or your head of legal, because ideally, you know, you're probably dealing with a lot of contractual risk. Maybe you're gaining consent to process personal data, etc. But as I understand it, a lot of students on this call will probably be law students. So if you're sitting there, you're probably advising the lawyers who are drafting your data processing agreements, right? And so they're asking for this amount, or maybe you have like an IT company, etc. On the other side of the coin, there's a lot of situations where your DPO is going to sit in your information security function. So say, for instance, in logistics and transportation, ideally speaking, you have a function where you're relying on a lot of IT systems, maybe to take in a lot of information, match a lot of information, put it on a parcel, and then have someone read it and go that. Or maybe if you're fleet tracking, for instance. So you want somebody who's going to be very heavily focused on making sure those systems are compliant by default. If you guys have heard of data protection by design and default, that's probably where it would sit. And you'd want somebody who is good at really putting out standard forms, etc. In some cases, probably you're processing maybe not sensitive personal data, or you're not doing complex things with your personal data. So I don't know, maybe I'm trying to think of a sector now, but let's say, for instance, you are in the business of sending out maybe packages, right? Maybe you have a business that sends a welcome package for new joiners in a company, and the people who do stuff like that. So you approach a company, you say, we'll do a basket for you for your new joiners, and they have hundreds of thousands because there's a lot of people in Nigeria. And that's all you do. So it's not complex, but there's vast volumes of data. So you might want somebody who's an internal audit or risk and compliance function, and that individual will probably be more doing some kind of data protection audit, making sure, okay, do we know how we are disposing of this? Does marketing know how to dispose of this? Is this in place? Are notices in place? Are cookies reflected in with the latest changes to the law? And they'll be doing that so that you can be able to say, when you go for a tender, when you selling or bidding, you say, hey, this is our score as far as ISO 27001 goes. So we are cutting edge. You can trust us with your new joiners information. We promise we delete it after every 3 months, and we are auditing. And the company will say, yeah, perfect. All we're giving you is name, etc., etc. So those are the sort of 3 practical ways off the top of it that your DPO could probably be installed into your organization. Another thing is, because a lot of companies now operate in a multi-jurisdictional environment, maybe perhaps you are a Nigerian branch of an American company, maybe you're Procter & Gamble's, etc. It may be likely that you are a part of a global function, and different laws are going to say different things about appointing a DPO. So, for instance, you could appoint a DPO in your UK office who's not necessarily in the UK because it's allowed, and that person maybe sits in Spain. In the EU, your EU office is then saying, well, yeah, we're going to appoint somebody in Poland, but we have 5 different offices around Europe, and we're allowed to appoint a lead supervisory, a lead authority, or a lead contact person, whatever name you want to give it. You might have a branch in South Africa and in Nigeria. So in South Africa, you're looking to say, well, the law here says we have to appoint a high-ranking person, so that the CFO, the managing director, as the DPO, and that person has to be an officer of the South African entity and living in South Africa. So you've appointed someone there. And then, of course, you've come to Nigeria. You could be asking yourself, what's the requirement for me? Can the guy who's sitting in Spain or the guy in South Africa handling all those operations sit there and still be able to discharge those functions? Or does it have to be somebody who's closer to the ground and has got fingers? So that's another aspect you want to see. You want to be very aware of the environment, the global context. We know the nature of personal data now is that it tends to go from place to place. You've got your servers in Ireland, you've got your whatever you've got happening, whatever. So probably in those 2 things, I'll probably leave it there. Of course, Abishola, please jump in.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Matthew, thank you. You've done a lot. And I think you're flowing from what I said earlier. I think you had said that, I had said that, they shouldn't look at the data protection from the Nigerian perspective only, that they should look at it internationally. And I'm very happy that you mentioned the practical aspects of, what typically happens, that sometimes it's really beyond Nigeria, sometimes it has to be outside. For example, where I work, we have a Ghanaian office, we have an Ugandan office, we have a Cameroon office, and all these people have data protection laws, and it's really beyond me. What obtains, even though the principles are the same, what obtains in Nigeria, maybe the regulatory compliance issues, it's not what obtains somewhere else. So I really appreciate what you said about that. I don't think I really have anything to add. I think Mr. Matthew has done justice to the fact that you just have to be wide in your duty as a DPO. Which brings me to the point of international data transfers. You might be in Nigeria, you might be transferring data to somebody somewhere else. So it's very important that your DPO role is really, you understand that it's really much more than just filing or giving returns to the NDPC, or even just attending seminars. It's really much more than that. It's taken very seriously. Like I said, you have to do record of processing activities. You have to look out for data protection and impact assessments. You have to also know when people's data has been breached. I'm always talking about data breaches because this time last year, I would say that I didn't really have any practical experience about data breaches, but within the last 1 year, I've been hearing data breaches a lot, and it's really important. Thank you. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, man. Thank you so much, Mr. Matthew. Also, so we'll be going straight to question and answer. Okay, please, Nathaniel. Yeah, you had a question. Please, you can go ahead and ask your question. I advise that we try as much as possible to ask as much questions as possible. You can send your questions into the chat box. I'm sure our mentors will do well to help with your questions. So, Nathaniel, please, you can go ahead with your question.
All right, thank you very much for the opportunity. My question centers around the qualification of a data protection officer at the different levels. Say the Nigerian Data Protection Commission is to employ a data protection officer. Section 33 of the Act says something about such a person having a requisite level of expertise in relation to data protection. So I would like to understand what that required level of expertise is by way of qualification, because Section 32 talks about expert knowledge. It says a data protection officer with expert knowledge of data protection laws and practices who is able to carry out tasks prescribed by the Act may be appointed by a data processor or controller. So I would like to understand the extent of qualification that's required for one to serve as a data protection officer, whether in the commission or as a private legal practitioner or an IT service provider, or let's say an audit firm. That's my question.
Thank you so much, Nathaniel. I would just like to allow the question to be open to our mentors. Please, Ma, do you have any thoughts on as regards the question now?
Okay, so I'd like to say that yes, you've said it, expert knowledge. So in this part of the world, I would say, a lot of times, you find that it's always easy for lawyers to enter into that role, because one thing about data protection is that it has a lot to do with laws and regulations. So, and even if when you're doing maybe when you're doing a professional exam in data protection, you would see that you cannot say that you've done data protection without knowing anything about the GDPR or the UK Data Protection Act, or maybe the laws in California, the ones in America. You just cannot do without those. And I believe that the reason why they say expert knowledge is because they feel like it's easier. But that being said, I know enough people that are not lawyers that are actually DPCOs. So for some people, it's from the technical aspect that they are more conversant with it, and they brush up themselves on the law. And there are some people who from the law, they know what the law says, but they're not very technical. And once they fuse into the role, they grow on that. But that being said, someone can say that, okay, is there any qualification for data protection? Yes, there are qualifications for data protection. I know that there are different ones. There's CIPPE by the IAPP. I know that in Nigeria, I think there's a privacy academy, and there's some for ISO, PCB. There's also OneTrust. So there are different ones. But like I said, whatever you're doing, you have to do something that has to do with law. I have friends in America who are DPOs, and they are not lawyers at all. Business administration people, and they just delved into it. But I believe that doing the exam, if you don't have a legal background, can give you maybe some kind of edge. But anybody who wants to be an expert must first learn. So you have to show me how you know how it is. It's a very tricky question. But this is as far as I would say. But it's always easier. Nathaniel, are you a lawyer?
Yes, I am.
So it's easier for you to be, a DPO. It's easier for you to just delve into that role. I can assure you that a lot of people, and people were so discouraged to do it because it had to do with law. And people just, some people just get terrified by seeing section this, article that, and all those kinds of things. You have to start explaining things like maybe what the GDPR says, or the blacklist, whitelist. I think it's a lot for some people. So yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you so much. Ma, are you still talking?
No, I'm not talking again. I'm not
Oh,
talking again. Not at all.
oh, all right. So,
Not at
Mr. Matthew, please, do you have any other things to add to that, or I should just move on to the next question.
No, I think she covered that quite well. Obviously, the laws word like that because you've got to allow room for context and for discretion. So if you write there must have A, B, C, D, F, G, it means we need to change the law every time there's a updated qualification or there's a new need. So I think they just use the word expert. I think it's dependent. Obviously, I have a few of those IPP qualifications. So you could say I'm an expert, right? I mean, I've got a CIPP, a CIPM, and I've got an SIP, but
Yes, can you clap for him? It's not easy to have those qualifications. He's the real expert. Expert raised to power 3.
That's true. Yes, thank you for the compliment. But say, for instance, if I wanted to go into a role that needed a information, so I interviewed last year for a role where they wanted somebody who understood the basics of big data analytics. So they needed someone with a basic understanding of computer science. And we had a discussion talking to this lady, and we talked, and I said, it's a field I'm building capacity in, but I'm not sure about this, and this, and this. And they said, you know what, good answers, but we need somebody who, so you see there in that case, they didn't consider the FIP, which is the highest you can get, as expertise. So that's how you have to see it, Nathaniel. It will really depend on sort of what your strengths are. I would imagine you're asking because you're going into a career. You're looking into a career in this field, so you want to know which is the best side. So it depends on what you're good at. If you want to do PwC, Deloitte, you need to be really good at project management. Could be companies where there's not really much personal data, but they are providing maybe a trust services. So say you have a cloud server company, you don't process that data insofar as you store it, right? You back it up, you never look at it, but you need to have a DPO. Obviously, you're in the sector, so you might find yourself being one of these people who's really writing a lot of policy and opinions, and you're in conferences, giving speeches and promoting how safe your products are. And then again, you might be somebody who's really, really good at fixing problems, or who's more comfortable with prosecution. So you might be looking at a heavy DPO role where you've got a lot of breaches. Now you want to do seizure of assets, maybe you're a mobile betting company and clever guys keep hacking into your system. So you want to be the guy who's always looking for measures. You've got a good relationship with prosecution, so you can do asset freezing, injunctions, interlocutory injunctions is your thing, and you're really going after these guys. So it depends, my friend. I think that's the summary. There's really no way to say this is it.
Thank you so much. That's quite an insight. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matthew and Ms. Abisola, for that. The next question, I think we have a question on the chat box here from Rama Oyedeji, sorry. Her question is, I would like to understand the role of the DPCOs. Are they DPOs or agents of the NDPC to monitor compliance with the Act? So, Ms. Abisola, do you have any take on that question?
Sorry, I didn't realize it was muted. Okay, so DPCOs are data protection compliance organizations. So initially, when NIPDA started, they needed organizations who would audit your data protection practices of companies. Now, so they are not DPOs, and they're not agents of NDPC. They are just compliance organizations. So let me make it easier for you. You know how you're in a company and every year your external auditors come to audit your financials. That's what it is that they do for companies. However, you need to notify the NDPC that this is your data protection compliance organization. They do that by themselves because they will submit your filings for you. So you remember I said that they audit you? Yes, they do audits every year. So for example, most organizations in Nigeria that are registered under the NDPC, they have actually gone ahead to submit their filings for their audit report. So every year, after the financial year or after the preceding year, for the first 3 months of the year or 2 months of the year, you have the DPCOs come and audit your organization. How have your data protection practices been? How are your privacy policies? How are your cookie policies? Your data subjects, how many data subjects are you processing their personal data? What about sensitive data? Things like that. Did you perform a DPIA? Did you perform a okay, just on top of my head, I'm just thinking of the things that are on the submitted to the NDPC, sorry, to the NDPC. Usually that submission is done, I believe it's the 20, I can't remember. I think 15th of March, yes, 15th of March. But I think this year they extended it to 15th of June. I'm not really sure, but 15th of March. A lot of companies have filed, and of course, they help you to secure your seal and just a confirmation that you have already filed. So they are recognized by the Act. They are also recognized by the Commission. They kind of liaise between you and you as a company, and it's like they are how would I put it now? They are a middleman here between you guys, you and the company, your company and the NDPC. I hope that's clear, Rama.
Rama, please can you confirm that the question was clear enough? The answer, I mean, rather. Okay.
I'm sure she probably has. I believe I don't know if any other person has. Mr. Matthew has anything to talk on that. No, okay, that's fine.
All right. So please, we're still
Sorry.
taking questions.
Good
Okay,
evening.
Okay,
Good evening.
Good evening, ma. I want to thank you guys for all the approach of during this evening concerning the topics. And I want to also appreciate you because I heard you talk at the Triple conference and you did wonderfully well. Okay, but I have a question this evening concerning, because I am according to some of our presentations today, when a DPO is at risk or he commits maybe an offense regarding data, or there's a breach in data, I just want to know, because I'm confused with the fact that is there a vicarious liability for the DPO himself, or does he bear the risks or like the consequences that amount when there's a data breach, or is the company also going to like take a bit of? I'm confused because there's some times where I know that his responsibility is to safeguard, collect, and like supervise like data coming in and going out. But like cases where maybe, should I say, beyond his control, is there like a vicarious liability situation in times like that?
Does Mr. Matthew want to answer?
Yeah, who asked that question? Can I just have your name, miss?
Okay, Angel. Good evening.
I think that's a really good question. I mean, that's a very sophisticated question. Vicarious liability. So I guess what I would want to do is I want to qualify liability for loss of what? Any idea? So are you talking about liability as a processor?
Sorry, like in the aspects. Sorry, are you asking me a question? I didn't hear you very well.
I'm asking, are you asking about, you know, the liability you have if you're the DPO of a processor of personal data, or liability?
Yes, liability
where the organization you work for is a processor on behalf of another controller.
Yes, the second instance. Yes.
Okay, that's a really good question. When you're looking at the role of a DPO, the DPO is not the controller. The controller will be the people within the organization. So the head of marketing, who is going to extract data sets to run campaigns, or the head of finance, who is going to transfer a big chunk of data to an audit company twice a year to look over. That is the controller, strictly speaking, or if you want to say the data owner. Now, it's important for me to say that there's a big link between a data privacy role and a data governance role. Because on the data governance side, there needs to be somebody who explains, okay, in this particular situation, in this department, who owns that data, who's the owner of that content, who's responsible for making sure it's stored in the right systems, for making sure it's accurate, etc., etc. Sometimes they can be the same role, depending on how big the function is, how, of course, complex, etc., etc. But there's a big link between that, because as the data protection officer, you would hardly ever be liable on behalf of the company, because the controller would be maybe the chief accounting officer, for instance, or the chief legal officer. That would be the responsible person within the business. And as a backstop, they will probably be covered by directors and officers cover. So directors and officers have to have a cover, an insurance cover, for times when they make a mistake. Yes, there may be some instances where perhaps based on your advice, the business then acts. So you tell the business, by the way, it's very likely that you can process this data, they process that data, and then maybe there's a breach, or maybe the individual say, by the way, we feel our rights have been violated and we sue. You may be liable. So that's a good question. It's very important for you to ask in those cases then, what is your personal liability? So if, let's say, you're an appointed DPO who also happens to be a C-suite executive, who also happens to be on the board of directors, you've obviously got further liability because you have a fiduciary duty to act in the best interest of the company under company law. Perhaps you've got a duty to act ethically. In some cases, maybe you say, I'm going to take these 100 names and send them to my brother who has an insurance company, because he might want to offer them insurance services, but they haven't consented to that. So you might act unethically. So that question is not easily said. I think it depends on the context. In summary, if you act unethically, or if there maybe is another liability coming from something other than data protection law, then yes, it's very possible. Secondly, if you're sort of advising the business, you might want to protect yourself and the business, maybe by having limitation of liability clause in any processor agreement. That's the instance you talked about, where you say, we will not be liable for this, this, and this, or we warrant that this is what we will do. Or maybe you want to cap your liability and say, if we do mess up and we act in a way that's not compliant with the NDPC, our limitation of liability is maybe 5 months of pay within the contract, or 2 times the amount of the contract and nothing more. It could be that you inherit liability on behalf of a sub-processor. So maybe somebody pays you. Let's use the example of the welcome baskets. Maybe you say, we're going to put together a welcome basket. So you're a processor of that information. And then you employ another company, so a sub-processor, who says, yeah, we can do delivery for you. We have guys on bikes. And the guys on bikes maybe end up robbing people because you've given them names, or committing some kind of fraud. And then you might say, well, we want to share a liability, or you could pass it down to the sub-processor to say, if you mess up and we get in trouble, you pay the entire amount of the contract. So it's really not a straightforward question. And the last thing I would say in summary is, then it's very important for you as a DPO to know exactly where you sit within the organizational structure, and to know whether you're covered when stuff hits the proverbial fan, I guess. So it's a great question, but not an easy one to give you a straight answer to. But I'd love Abishola to say something, because I haven't practiced as a lawyer in a couple of years, and this is a very legal question.
Okay. Well, I think you've said it all. I think one thing I got from your explanation is there's always a context to everything. It's not a direct answer. A lot of times, the DPO is actually not responsible for the data breaches. In my own experience, it's probably someone that doesn't have anything to do with data protection, that is just doing something annoying, and it is now picked up by the data protection officer. I don't see because the kind of information that is really breached, a lot of times might not sit under the DPO. The DPO usually doesn't, is not in a department where data protection can be breached. Most of the time, where you have data breaches is finance, IT, and the human resources department. And a lot of times it's not the DPO. But yes, vicarious liability, obviously, if any of these departments does anything, the company will take the blame for it. But I think Mr. Matthew has justified, has done a lot of justice to answering the question. That's my take on it, just to add to what he has said. And it always depends on the context. It's not to say that DPOs cannot be responsible, but obviously, if he's responsible, the principle of vicarious liability would apply. But in most cases, that doesn't happen, because it's usually not the DPO that breaches. And what does he have to do when there's a breach? He needs to report it immediately to the commission. That there has been a data breach without undue delay. Just report it immediately.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma, and thank you also, Mr. Matthew, for helping out with that question. Okay, we have two questions on the chat board, but before we take them, Nathaniel, please, you can go ahead and ask your question. Your hand is raised again.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much again for the opportunity. Please, sirs and Mars, I'd like to know what the typical content of a data audit report are. Since the law requires that organizations must file or submit a report to the commission on a periodic basis, I'd like to know what the typical contents of that report. What are the contents of a data audit report? What should it contain?
Alright. Okay. I mean,
If I
sorry, I
was
can't hear you.
heard,
Nathaniel, are you with us? Your network seems to be breaking.
Network seems to be breaking. Yeah.
I'm here now. I can hear you now.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
I can hear you now.
Okay. So the data, the audit report, so it goes two ways. First of all, your DPCA will give you an audit checklist. You're supposed to fill the audit checklist, and a lot of questions will come up. What kind of business do you do? What's the name of your company? Just starting from the beginning. What kind of business do you do? What's the name of the company? Have you been audited before? How many people have you been processing over 2,000 people's data? Do you have a privacy policy? Do you have a retention policy? Do you have, so I don't have one in front of me, so I may miss something out. So just in case, and if Mr. Matthew wants to add something, it would be nice. Do you have a retention policy? Have you done a data protection impact assessment in the last year? Do you have a record of processing activities? What about your international transfers? Do you have standard clauses? Then there are also questions on, emerging technologies. I saw that this year. I didn't see that last year from my DPO. Emerging technologies. In any of your applications, that's if you're a tech company. Um, I'm just trying to think of, yeah. So I would like to say that for the audit reports, they may be different. It may not be the same thing for every company or the audit checklist. And I'll tell you why. For example, the audit report for a startup will probably be different from the audit reports or the audit checklist for a company that has been going on or existing for maybe like 10 years. And they've been keeping people's data. For example, a startup might not have so much information to give, and the DPCO would understand that even in the kind of questions that he asks. So it's not like there's one audit checklist for every company. The DPCO, yes, tailors it to what the company has done or should do, but they are just general things that they should ask them. And basically, but Nathaniel, if you need
Yes,
one,
ma'am.
you can reach out to me. I'll give you an example of one. I can't, tell you, what it
Okay.
is, but just
I'd appreciate
understand
that,
that.
man.
Yes, just understand that the basic reason why you have an audit report is because an audit has been conducted on the company regarding its privacy framework in the company, and this is just like a report. Remember, I said that it's like a financial audit whereby they come for the previous year's audit in a company, they audit you, how much have you spent, what have you done, but in this context, it's in privacy. And sometimes it might not be, even though there are some standard questions that they ask, it might not just be the same for every organization. For example, for a startup, there are some things that might not apply for a company that's in existence for like 10 years, that has, those structures. It may be something different. I think I hope I've answered your question. Then
Yes, you
I
have,
forgot
man.
to say that there is also a part where the DPCO says and the DPO they say that, they mentioned the name of the DPO, but the DPO still has to say that, look, I audited this and I certified that everything that is on this audit report is true, and as they're submitting it to the commission. Once they're done with that report, they send it via email to the NDPC. And for example, you can check, there's a portal on NDPC that you can check, whether a company is registered on the NDPC. Sorry, registered on their website. Sorry, their portal. Yes, I hope that I've been able to explain.
Yes, thank you so much, Ma. The last question before I drop my hands.
Yes.
Recently, I hear that the National Identity Management Commission requires individuals who would want to correct their data on their database to pay some amount of money. For example, to change their names, their date of birth, they have to pay a fee. And I understand it's 15,000 naira for change of date of birth. I want to know how legal that is, because I like to think, okay.
Except for NDPC, I don't work there. I don't work there. But I mean, I'm sure they spent a lot of money, in putting this data together. You should have mercy on them and just help them to pay the 15,000. If that is what they are doing, I don't know. But to the best of my knowledge, I believe I saw that on Twitter earlier this week, and I didn't see anything about money. So is the money that they are collecting, is it legal or illegal? Is it like upfront that they said that you have to pay 50,000 for it? Because I've not heard that as an issue. Is it something that they are collecting at the back or legally?
Legally, they actually demand for it. If you go
they demand for it, but is it on their website? That's a different thing. Is it legal that they are collecting it? Obviously, if it's not on their website, if it's not part of the information, I didn't see it on that, because I was considering changing my name, and I didn't see that. So if it's not on their website, then I guess that some people are just having a field day. And I think that is outside the confines of data protection and privacy. That is going to law now. But I can see a question here about the NIMC and the Express Verify breach issue. And also,
sorry, Ma, we didn't get you.
No, I can see a question on another question on NIMC on the chat.
Yes, Ma. I was about reading that once Nathaniel was done.
Okay, so I've seen it, and he said, "Can you throw more light on the NIMC data breach where a licensee on NIMC Express Verify breaches NIMC database without authorization, and secondly, an instance where some monetize the correction of data subjects." Okay, so the one on monetizing the correction of data on data subjects, I think it's outside our purview, because I saw that advert and I didn't see anything about 15,000 naira. However, I heard on radio that they are collecting and it's not legal. But you know how Nigeria is. I'm sure someone has probably said they should collect it, and but like I said, Nathaniel, did you see it on their website that they said they should collect 15,000? I cannot verify that, so I can't say.
I didn't see it on their website, but I saw it.
Exactly. It's not. Yes, yeah. Do you understand? I also heard it, but I don't know. But it shouldn't be right. It shouldn't be right. But I don't think there's anything wrong in doing it for free. I don't think. I think it's more of a corruption kind of issue that they're just collecting it. But I didn't see that when I saw it on Twitter. And then sorry.
That means it can be challenged in court, the monetization of.
Oh yes, it can be channeled to court, but it's not. I mean, that's a different. That's not under data protection. I see that you're very concerned about this money issue, Nathaniel. Are you affected? Did they collect money from you?
No, not really. I was actually at one of their outlets today, and I saw one of the agents demanding for 15,000 for the guy to change his date of birth. That's supposed to be free, because I think it's within the purview of data privacy, because one of the rights of a data subject is the right to rectification of data. So if you have
I agree with you that, right? In fact, you can even request that they should delete your data. Yeah,
Absolutely.
right to be forgotten. You can, but guess what? In Nigeria, things are just different. I don't think that it is legal for them to collect that money, and I think that they should be challenged. It should be free for. If I go to my bank and I say I want to change my name or my address, it's usually free. So how much more a government parastatal? I don't think it's right, and I think that something should be done about it. If that is what is happening.
Thank you so much, man.
Yes. Now on the NIMC issue, just to throw more light, I'm sure you know that Express Verify um, they had access to the NIMC website. Now NIMC obviously biometrics of people, facial recognition, or at least just information about people and their data, sensitive information about people. And the company called Express Verify just has access to this information. They're not a partner to NIMC. They don't have anything to do with NIMC, I mean, according to what I read, and they're able to take information from them. This is sensitive information. By virtue of that, the NDPC called the NIMC and said, look, people's data have been breached as a result of this. Now, obviously, there's been a data breach. The NIMC has come out to deny that no, and they have also promised. I guess they don't. I mean, they're just being the big boy and saying that look, we didn't do that, or it was not. It wasn't. That's not what happened. But they have also gone ahead to say that look, we'll ensure that our data is more secure and we will not just give access to anyone. But I believe that matter is still ongoing, and it's still being investigated by the NIMC. So I can't speak much. But yes, there was a data breach, and what Express Verify did was obviously wrong. It was a data breach, and I'm sure that the principle of data breaches must have applied. They must have, somebody must have, without undue delay, notify the NDPC, or I don't know even if it's the NDPC that found out. But yes, it was a data breach, and NIMC or Express Verify, depending on how what will happen in the coming days, must and should pay a fine for that. That is people's information. Thank you. I don't know if Mr. Matthew has anything to say.
There's so many questions. On monetization, I think there is an allowance for a charge where it would be excessive or it would be really difficult to discharge a data subject's right. So for instance, if you were needed to print and mail or courier, maybe deliver in Braille, if the person was blind and asked for it in Braille. But then because this is an online platform, I would imagine that it wouldn't be very costly to get them to change it online, since it's already on the internet anyway. Probably that's an aspect of constitutional law. Maybe the Law Society of Nigeria will probably want to litigate that if it's ever official, because it then is a question of, can you charge people to guarantee what are essentially their third generation human rights? So extensions of their right to be left alone. Can you, it's like asking people, can you pay for water? So there's always ways around it, I suppose. And probably the government will be able to say it's an administrative cost because they want people on the back end to go in and make those changes, or maybe it's a difficult database to search. So it's neither here nor there. Is it fair? Certainly not. Is it justifiable? Probably. The second thing would be, in recent times, there have been many cases of data breaches in the banking sector. This is the third question. Sensitive data is then used to defraud data subjects, and nothing has happened and has not seen any actions by the banks. That's a good one as well. That's something you can take to the regulator and say, my information. So at the moment, when you talk about infringement of your data privacy rights, the initial thought when the GDPR, for instance, was coming about was that as long as your rights are infringed, so say for instance, your gas company has misspelled your name, and now you need to sue them because you feel you misspelled my name, my statement was in someone else's name. You actually need now to be able to show the extent of the damage. So if you say, well, because you misspelled my name, it went to the wrong person, and then I was unable to pay my bill because I didn't have an invoice from you. I didn't know how much I owed you, and so it has affected my credit rating, and I was unable to take a loan. That's what you're gonna have to prove in terms of it being justifiable to you as a data subject. But on the whole, it would be you to prove that to the regulator. So you could do it on behalf of the public. But then I don't know where that goes, because at the end of the day, there's a lot. The truth of the matter is, even though these are big organizations, probably you'll find their privacy functions are not as comprehensive or well stocked as they would like. And so they can only act on what they know, what they're able to investigate. And even further down the chain, you'll find that the regulator probably is unable to keep up with the demand. Maybe they're getting hundreds of thousands of complaints. My carpenter, the lady who does my sewing, has been texting me, all the way up to my bank. I think every time I contact my bank, somebody comes to defraud me. So again, the ability to deal with those kinds of issues is extremely challenging. Even in places here in the UK, I was at a conference last month, and the regulators here, the General Counsel of the ICO, was just saying, well, I mean, 66,000 reports a month. Where do we even start? Do you know what I mean? So it's a really difficult one. I can imagine you yourself are grieved. Probably, if you're asking this question because you're affected personally, what I would advise would be to treat it as a customer service complaint. You could generally ring them up or fill in a complaint form and say, look, I know someone who was defrauded. This is the account number. Can you do things right? And maybe they'll offer them a free voucher or something, or offer to correct the information. So it's really difficult. I mean, yeah. And then there's also the aspect of this is to the best of your knowledge. Perhaps they've reported themselves to the ICO, they're investigating and prosecuting and making changes. Maybe Olukunle is just not seeing the full picture. I don't know. So it's a good question for discussion purposes, but the practicality of it is that this will continue to happen. I mean, just because of the nature of data, I could very easily grab a screenshot of your names. All of you have shared both names. I could go on LinkedIn, grab a picture of you, create a fake Instagram account, and then ask people to send me £50. I could ask the people on this call, assuming that you're classmates, just say, hi, my phone was stolen. Reaching out to you guys on LinkedIn. Could you guys send me £5? I'll refund you. And because you probably know each other, you do that. That's how far is that gonna go in terms of enforcement? Probably not very far. So yeah, sorry not to be to be overly optimistic, but that's the practical reality of enforcement. It's a challenge.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matthew, and thank you so much, Ms. Abisola. I think the second question that he asked, the matters or the areas around it has been addressed by our mentors, and it has been a wonderful discussion so far in the question and answer session. Thank you to all the mentees who asked their questions, and I'm sure our mentors have been able to do justice and give answers to your question. We are a little um, bit short on time, right? We've gone past the time a bit, but it has been a wonderful 2 hours plus. Okay, Miss Ma, you can go ahead and unmute yourself now.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I saw a question on P and ID.
Yes, ma'am.
P and ID, I don't think that applies here because confidential information is not personal data. They're two different things. So it wouldn't apply here. To the best of my knowledge, I'm not sure that the confidential information or confidential document here had to do with personal data regarding the P and ID case. So, but just one thing you need to know is that when it comes to data protection, it's not really about confidential information, but it's more about personal data, and the data subjects, rights, basically. So in that P and ID case, it doesn't apply. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ma. Um, I think with that, we've come to the end of today's session. Thank you, Ms. Abisola, and thank you, Mr. Matthew, for being here on call with us. Thank you for your shared time, your shared knowledge, and your shared experience. We want to say thank you, and thank you to all the mentees that were able to stay with us to the end of the class. Well done. We look forward to having all our mentees in our next session. And with that, we say good night. Good night to everyone here. And please enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Matthew. Thank you to the mentee. Thank